Welcome to Beyond the Next Chapter. I'm your host, Whitney Clark, and we are in for a treat today because I'm joined by one of my favorite authors, Kennedy Ryan. She's here to talk about her new book, Can't Get Enough, the third in her Skyland series, which I know so many of you read and have loved over the years. Kennedy is a New York Times bestselling author who's known for her novels written for women from all walks of life. What I really love about her books is they're real-life, relatable adult issues that so many of us go through in our own lives, and she balances it so very delicately and beautifully with these just gorgeous love stories and really strong women, which we love as well. Kennedy is also the co-founder of Lift for Autism, an annual charitable book auction. So Kennedy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
So tell us about this new book. What can readers expect?
Well, people who have read the first two, it's book three in a series called Skyland. But if you haven't read the first two books, you can read this as a standalone. The heroine is Hendrix, and she's a business owner. She's an entrepreneur. She manages celebrities, which is a lot of fun. It adds kind of a dash of glamour to this story. She oversees, along with a few friends, a venture capital fund for Black women entrepreneurs. And she is caring for an aging parent. Her mom is in early stages of Alzheimer's, and I think a lot of people will resonate with that. And so she's balancing all of that, and she is strong, she's fiery, she's confident. She, has made certain decisions. She's childless by choice, which is an interesting thing to explore in the context of a romance novel because you don't usually see that. So I was really interested in all of that, but she has this really big, full life. And she's not even sure that she has room or necessity for love. And that in comes our hero, Maverick Bell. And, that's where the questions start of maybe I do. If it's the right person, maybe I do. So.
And what I love about her and what makes her so unique is she's a woman who's independent. She's established in her career. She has her friends. And then she meets this man and she's like, oh, I think that he fits in my life.
Yeah,
Usually that's not
yeah.
the case in a lot of these romance novels.
Yeah, I think, and I always say that when people ask, like, how do you, create character? If it's, especially if it's like a woman and a man, I build the woman first, and then I build a man who's worthy of her. That's how I think of it is, I first shape that woman. Who is she? What are her needs? What are her vulnerabilities? What are her strengths? What are her ambitions? What are her goals? What are her needs? And then I craft a guy that kind of fits that or that draws the best out of her, but is definitely going to be the kind of person who she could have as a lifetime partner. And so I think that with Hendrix, she is 40 years old. And that's another thing with my romance novels that they're not that there aren't romance novels with 40-year-old women, but most of them are not, a 40-year-old women. And so the thing I like about writing heroines who are a little older than the average is that especially if there's someone like Hendrix, they spent time with themselves. They know themselves. They have figured out what makes them content, what makes them happy, what they need, what they don't need, what they will settle for, and what they won't settle for. And I think when you have that kind of foundation personally, and you have that kind of understanding of self, it changes the way you approach a partner. Potentially, it changes the way you approach spending a lifetime with a partner and what you're looking for in that partner. And I think that's kind of something that we're interrogating and examining in this story.
And Hendrix and Mav are real true partners. They're each their own
Mhm.
individual self and they fit into sort of each other's worlds.
Yes.
What was the writing process like for you with this book?
My creative process, my background is journalism. And so I always start with kind of fact. I always start with lived experience, especially when you're handling something like Alzheimer's. In the second book of this series, the hero had autistic twins. I'm an autism mom, but I didn't think, just lean on my experience. I interviewed a lot of parents and medical professionals for that. And so I took kind of the same approach with this story, starting with talking with people who are caring for aging parents who have dementia or Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, like some kind of degenerative condition, having lots of conversations with people who are having to do that, like manage all the pieces of your life, whether you're a mom, wife, running your own business, but also having to take responsibility for the care of the person who has most likely cared for you, for a good part of your life. So I talked to lots of people who are having that experience. I talked to lots of people who were, in venture capital, which was something that I wasn't familiar with, but I really wanted to paint Hendrix as someone who is concerned about her community and investing in her community, investing in other women. And so I did lots of that, reading books on venture capital, reading books on Alzheimer's, lots of interviews. So just to kind of build that foundation of fact for fiction. And then when I started writing, I was really wanting Hendrix to be someone who, we mentioned that she was childless by choice. People would ask me when they found out, well, do you think people will think she's cold? And I was like, cold? Why would someone think she's cold? And I kind of knew what they meant and what was behind that question, but I wanted to interrogate it because it was very informative for my process. Because when I started writing Hendrix, I realized, there are people who think that if you choose not to have children, there's something quote unquote wrong. There's something defective. There's something cold about you because who wouldn't want to have kids? I mean, those conversations definitely informed the way I wrote Hendrix, who is someone who is very certain of her reproductive choices. But then she's also someone who, even though she isn't a parent, is giving out love into the world in every way you can imagine, into her community, pouring into Black women entrepreneurs, pouring into her friends and her friends' kids. She's the rich auntie, she's investing in her friends' children, of obviously her mother's care, her aunt who is a primary caregiver. Like she's pouring into people all over. And so there is this question of, and I think it's something that we are wrestling with in broader culture, is defining women by their wombs, defining women by their reproductive capacity. And I think Hendrix is someone who I wanted to say, I may not have kids, but that doesn't mean that I'm not pouring my love into the world. I have so much love, and you don't get to tell me how to love or where I place my love. And so that is the kind of person that Hendrix is. And my writing process was definitely informed by the conversations that are going on in culture, but also in the conversations that I was having with people who are living these experiences.
And that conversation, I do think, does seem to be changing. And I think more women in the spotlight are talking about their
Yeah.
decisions not to have kids. I'm pretty sure I highlighted that like whole there's, I mean, she addresses it multiple times in the book, but I highlighted a whole paragraph when Hendrix is kind of talking about that, about, her choices. And I just loved that. And internally, I was just giving you like a little round of applause during because I love it, and we certainly need to have more of those conversations. And Hendrix is taking care of her mom who has Alzheimer's. Who anyone who has dealt with this knows it can just be so devastating on the entire family. And you write in the author's note that this was personal for you as your grandmother had Alzheimer's, and I just want to say I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
How is your family doing? What was it like for you interviewing your mom? Which you said you interviewed
Right.
your mom as well about this.
Right. She had dementia, not Alzheimer's specifically. She had dementia, but obviously presenting in most of, the same symptoms. It was talking to my mom, and she lived with my aunt, and my aunt and my mom were her primary caregivers. It was difficult watching her lose memories, obviously forgetting who we were. Um, I think that I was actually with her when she passed away, like I was in the room with her, and she didn't really remember who any of us were, but she was calling out for her mom and calling out for her siblings and calling out for people who had gone ahead of her. And it was kind of comforting to me. It felt like there's like real mercy here and real hope in the sense that there was some part of her that still recognized, who her mother was, who her siblings were. And that's what she was longing for. That's what she was reaching and asking for. And she, truly believed that was the next phase for her. And so that was that was a good experience for me to have. It was funny because I turned in my edits on this book the week before she passed away. And so I, obviously wrote that author's note after, and it just, I don't know. It gave me a real deep compassion, obviously, for people who are experiencing this. Whenever I'm writing something like this, and it's why I put that note in the beginning, I'm very cognizant that this is not just like something I made up, but there is someone actually negotiating these difficult situations. And especially with like an author's note, I want them to know before they come into this book, this is happening, and if you're going through this, it might be difficult to read. You may need to put it down. You may need to, take your time. I hope that navigating it myself and my family gave me more compassion, more empathy, so that, and hopefully I could imbue the story with that. So yeah, and it was interesting interviewing my mom because, I knew what she was going through and I knew what they were navigating, but to hear them articulate it, to me personally, you just realize there's a lot that people in these situations carry around. And I was glad actually just to give her a space to vent, actually just to give her a space to kind of express those things and articulate not only those things, but fears, because a lot of people who are negotiating these things think about how heritable it is, how, is this something that my future is going to look like? That was something my mom and I discussed. So yeah, it was an interesting situation. And I think this entire series has been kind of like that, meaning I had this experience. And in the second book, obviously, I have, over 20 years experience raising someone with autism. And in the first book, the heroine is coming out of a very deep depression. And I was actually diagnosed with depression while I was writing the book. So this whole series has felt to me like it has these like hooks in my personal life that draw things out of me that I hope are helpful for other people.
Has writing about channeling your own experiences been cathartic or therapeutic for you?
For sure, for sure. Especially for the entire series, but I think probably most notably the first book. I was 6 months late, like 6 months late turning that book in, and I could not write. And I was like, this is the worst writer's block I've ever had. And I went to my writing coach and we were talking about it, and she was like, Kennedy, I don't think this is writer's block. I actually think you should probably talk to someone. And I'm like, no, not me. I don't know. There's no way. And I went through, and I always tell this part to encourage people who are looking for a therapist or navigating depression. I went through three therapists to find the right one. And sometimes when you are depressed, it's so hard when you try the first therapist and it's not the right one because it took so much just to get there. And then when you try the next one and it's not the right one, you're like, okay, is this even worth it? And then when I got to the third one, I said to her, I have a book due. I just need you to fix me because I have a book due. That's all I cared about. And she said to me, I really don't care about your book. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You need to care about my book. I have a deadline. And she said, I believe that if you focus on doing the work of yourself, that this could be the best book you've ever written. And I mean, who knows what the best book I've ever written is because that's so subjective. But certainly before I let go, completely changed the trajectory of my career. And just exploded a lot of things in my life in a good way. So I think especially before I let go was notably cathartic. And one of my intentions going into that story was to really destigmatize therapy and getting help, for mental health, because that's stigmatized for everyone. But then when you get into marginalized communities, even more so. And when you get into men, even more so. And so I really wanted women, especially who have partners who are resistant to therapy, because in that first book, the husband, ex-husband, because they get a divorce, is resistant to therapy. And over the course of the story, engages with therapy and really comes to realize I need this. This is a tool that is life changing and potentially, saving the love of my life, like saving that relationship. And now I have so many women who are like, I have been trying to get my husband to go to therapy, and I just said, read this, I just give him the book, and so many people who come into my DMs, into my messages, and they're like, I've been thinking about going to therapy after I read Before I Let Go. I called my insurance company, to see if it would be covered. And a lot of people, because it also deals really going into medications, because some people have a lot of reservations about that. People messaging me saying, I read Before I Let Go. I knew that I needed to try it. I've given it a try. It's amazing, or, whatever. But that was really my intention, one of my big intentions for that story. And so for me to see that kind of impact has been very cathartic for me, very therapeutic for me. And whenever I am like lazing on my therapy and like, oh my gosh, I just don't feel like it, I think about those people, who came to me and said, because of Before I Let Go, they've engaged that process, and encourages me to stay, to stay in that process.
Yeah, because therapy, mental health is an ongoing journey. It's
Mhm.
not like you just go to 3 sessions and then you're fixed,
Right.
as much as we would all hope that would be. How do you sort of protect your peace and your mental health while you're writing books, you're going on a book tour, you have a son, you have a husband, and everything else that comes with life?
Yeah, I think one thing my therapist really encouraged me to do was to take a social media break, because I'm on social media constantly, and that probably triples when I'm preparing for a book, because you're always telling people, "Oh, pre-order this," look, you can get the books here, and you're just all over social media, connecting with readers and the public to let them know that the book is coming. So I have like taken social media breaks, and because I'm so addicted to my phone. My husband, I came into my office one day, and my husband had left a book on the desk that said how to break up with your phone. And I said, okay, this is a hint. This is a hint. And so I always feel like, okay, I'm going to have so much anxiety when I, am not on social media, because I'm going to feel like I should be doing something. And it was the opposite, just so much peace. And I have started, I saw something, how you're surfing on Instagram, scrolling, and one of these stories came up that talked about walking. And like, this is what happens to your brain after 15 minutes. This is what your brain looks like after 30 minutes. This is what your brain looks like after 40 minutes. And at an hour, wow, these are the benefits. And so I've started walking an hour at least 4 times a week, and it helps, like the dopamine, whatever the hormones are that get stirring, and how your brain is oxygenated, and it gives me peace, like just some time by myself. And a lot of times I am like putting on a podcast, or playing music, and I am a big audio reader. Like, that's how I read. And lately I've just been like, you know what, I'm just going to leave it all off and spend time with my own thoughts and see what that feels like. And it's been such a great process, because the first few minutes I'm just like, missing the noise.
Yeah.
And then by the time I get into like the 10-minute, 15-minute range, I'm starting to think about the book I'm writing, and ideas are coming and solutions are coming. And it's just, I don't know, it settles me in a way that I am starting to take advantage of more. So that activity, and one thing that I do just to kind of decompress all the time is just my husband and I every night watching television. It's only an hour. That's usually all I get. It's like an hour, but it also like puts us in the same room on the same couch,
Yeah.
uh, so that there's something that we enjoy together, even if it's something as simple as that. But that's like a ritual that we do to protect our relationship too, because it's easy for us just to continue to miss each other.
How long have you guys been married?
27 years.
Oh, how'd you meet?
We met right out of college. We met right out of college, and we were friends. And I was on campus, and he was working with like a campus organization, and I was in that organization. And so he was kind of like a campus officer, and he came on with everybody else. And that was the first time we met, and we bonded around basketball, because I'm such a huge basketball fan. He played basketball like in high school and a little bit in college, and we both were Tar Heels, because I'm from North Carolina. He's from North Carolina. When you live in North Carolina, most people fall into Duke or Carolina. Like, unless you go to a specific school, are you a Tar Heel or are you, a Blue Devil? We were both Tar Heels. We actually ended up getting married on the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, which is where I went to college. So we bonded around basketball right off, and then just became friends. And then later on, more.
How many books have you written? How many books do you have published right now?
I think it's 23. I think it's 23.
Okay. When
Yeah.
did you know that you wanted to become an author?
So I have been a writer, like I said, for a long time. I started writing for my city newspaper when I was 17. And then I went on to journalism school. And so I have been doing all kinds of writing my whole life, technical writing, PR, ghost writing, chicken soup for the soul. Especially once my son was diagnosed with autism, a lot of my writing went into advocacy, like mom and kind of like parent magazines and things like that, writing about autism, writing about our family's experiences. And I actually started, I know run Lyft for Autism now, but maybe 2 years after my son was diagnosed, I started a foundation for families who have children with autism. And I ran that for about 11 years. So at the time, all my writing was around autism. I was running the foundation. I was helping families who have, kids with autism. And I was a special needs mom myself. And I kind of was like, I need a little bit of an escape. I need something that is just something pleasurable that I enjoy. And I had loved reading romance when I was much younger, voraciously. I hid it from my mom because she just thought I was too young. This is like the 8th grade. I'm hiding romance novels in my mattress, But I hadn't read romance in a long time. And I went back to reading romance and remembered how much I loved it and was like, I'm a writer. Why have I never thought to write romance, And so and I had always thought that I was going to write, but I thought it would be like memoir, nonfiction, self-help, that kind of thing. I didn't think it was going to be fiction. And so, yeah.
What do you love about writing romance books?
The thing I love about romance, there are many things I love about writing romance. One, I think it's such a source of joy. Like, it is a genre that it's the only genre that guarantees joy, like that guarantees that this is all going to end well. And a lot of people are like, well, that makes it predictable. But I really don't think it does. I mean, you know how it's going to end, but I think that good romance writers, it's all about the journey, because the only things that are defining for the genre is that you have a happily ever after and that you have a central love story. That's it. Everything else is like up for grabs. And anyone who reads like my romance novels, they're always like, is this romance? Because this is not what I thought romance was. And yet this is what's happening in this book. And even though people know it's a romance, my DMs are always like, especially on, certain books, wait, is she going to be okay? And I'm like, you know that she's going to be okay. Like, it's a romance novel. They're like, I know, but I can't, it doesn't feel like it right now. And I'm like, I have done my job. When you are guaranteed that everything's going to be okay, and people who are reading are still like, it might not be okay. I think that the thing I love about romance too is that because it's such a safe genre, when I say safe, meaning, things are going to end well, and it's so digestible, it's such a digestible genre that for me, it creates opportunity for conversations and discourse, because it's like, okay, we're swooning, we're kissing, it's hot in here, whatever. And then it's like, oh, wow, now we're talking about mental health. Now we're talking about caring for an aging parent. Now we're talking about intimate partner abuse. Now we're talking about, so really clearing space for difficult conversations with the certainty, with the guarantee that it's all going to be okay. And especially when I'm writing things that are trauma informed, in the context of a romance novel, writing something like I've written survivor stories where it's like someone is in an intimate, in a situation where she's like in an intimate partner violence relationship, coming out of that, laying a new track, finding, hope and happiness. And so I think this genre gives us like this great landscape for if we want to talk about hurt, it gives us a space to talk about, to do trauma informed fiction and then trauma responsive fiction where there is like a trajectory for healing and hope. And I think all of that can happen in one space because we are guaranteed that happily ever after. So that's what I really love about it. I think that so many people underestimate what romance is capable of. And I like being someone who's constantly challenging that, who's constantly saying, no, I think you've underestimated the genre.
And I think that is a common misconception. If people haven't picked up a romance book in a long time, they might go into it thinking that, but your books are about so much more than that. And what I do love about your books is how they portray female friendships. And you have this trio of friends in the Skyline series who I just adore. And I love their dialogue. I love the way they talk and text each other. I'm like, this is like I'm talking to my own girlfriends. How have female friendships changed you and your personal life?
Yeah, I think there are women whom I've leaned on in difficult times for sure. And I hadn't realized how much my mom's friendships when I was growing up, like the friendship, the model of sisterhood that my mom showed me, I didn't realize how much it had been an influence until I started really like digging into where did I get these ideas about sisterhood? Where did I get these ideas about people who, and I refer to them, I think in book 3, I refer to their friendship as like a platonic soulmate,
Mhm.
and I look at my mom's relationships and I'm like, that's what she had. And that's what I have tried to create in my life, is just people who, and it doesn't have to be a lot. The older I get, the fewer friends I need. It's like a tight circle, it's like everybody I can be friendly with and acquaintances with, but I recognize like the treasure of real authenticity and of authenticity and trust and honesty, where you can like, okay, girl, let's have a real talk right now. Like, I don't know what you're doing over there, but like, that's not it. Somebody who can really like take the gloves off with you, and you have history, you love each other, and you know that they're gonna have your best interest at heart. Those are the kinds of relationships that I have in my inner circle. And my mom definitely is such a huge influence in that. And I think that it's so funny because when my husband is listen, I don't let him read things early, ever. He's always like, could I read no. And so he's just now, the book comes out Tuesday, and he is just now, they sent out like early copies and I let him get one and so he's listening to one, and he's like, oh my gosh, there's so much of our lives in here, and I'm like, you think so? He's like, oh yeah, like even he Maverick, the hero, calls his nickname for Hendrix is gorgeous, and that's my husband's nickname for me. And even he has this thing in the book where he goes, wagwan gorgeous, and it's from Top Boy, which is like one of our favorite shows that we watched together like last year. He's like, we're all in this. But also, like, I grew up in church. I grew up in church. My parents are both preachers. And so all that Hendrix is this kind of this interesting contrast of and when I did the playlist, I don't know if you've ever heard Beyonce's song Church Girl, but it's like, it's a raunchy song, but it's called Church Girl. And that's Hendrix in a nutshell. She's this very liberated woman, very much comfortable with her own sexuality. But in this book, we see she comes from these kind of roots with faith, and her mom and her aunt. I'm thinking about when you talk about these women in relationships, how her whole community of women come around her when her mom has Alzheimer's, and when her aunt is having surgery, they're bringing the casseroles and they are checking on them and they are just there for each other. That's the kind of community I grew up in. I grew up in a community that was mostly my family. My grandfather had owned this huge farm. And then when it was time, and he had like 12 kids. And when it was time to send them to college, he sold off a lot of the land, and he just left a plot of land for each of his children. And so that's where we lived, So I was surrounded by aunts and uncles and cousins, and my whole neighborhood was my family. And so I think that's been a huge influence on me as far as what does it look like to live communally? What does it, feel like to like be there for people in those really intimate ways? And so I definitely think that influenced the way I created this friendship.
Yeah, I love their friendships. I loved reading about Skyland. I'm like, I want to move there. It sounds like such a fun place, and these ladies are always there for each other. And I also love how Hendrix, I think when she's at her mom's house, she still is like 40 years old, but won't want to say a bad word. Like even
Yes.
her mom, she's like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, not in my mama's house. Yes.
I love that as well. I read you mentioned you don't wait until your husband's listening to the book now, and I read he travels with you on the book tours.
Mhm.
What has it been like going through this whole process with him and with your family?
It's been interesting because I'm always like, you don't have to go, you can just, and he's like, no, because I don't know if you've ever seen the TikTok where there's a woman who is like incredibly capable and she's like on the phone and she's like doing all this. And then when she gets to the airport, she's basically just like, where do we go? What? Just like, that's me, and my husband knows that about me. He's like, you will end up like in the wrong city. And so it's been really good. A few weeks ago, I had to fly to New York for an event with like I think it was with Spotify. And I got to the interview and I didn't have my earrings. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have my earrings. And my husband is like, where are they? And he jumps in the car, goes back to the hotel, races back, and before they start like filming, has my earrings, And I feel like that's just like a small glimpse into how tuned in he is to like what I need. I'm thinking about a time when there was a lot that I was supposed to do and I was really, really tired. And there was something extra. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do it. And my husband literally, like, on his phone, texts my publicist and is like, hey, she's not doing that. That extra thing, she's not doing that. And the publicist was so grateful that he told her that because I'm the one who's like, okay, like my plate is full, give me a bigger plate. I can do more things. And my husband's like, no, we're not doing that, And so he's very protective of me on the road. And I need that because I'm not always protective of myself.
I think a lot of women can relate to that. It's so hard to say no. It's so
Yeah.
hard to like establish, boundaries. And I can imagine if you're already out on the road doing something, it's even like tenfold.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
So, a few years ago, you became the first Black author to win the Rita Award, one of the most prestigious in the
Mhm.
romance genre. What did that feel like?
I mean, at the time it felt really great. It was a big deal because that organization had been around for 37 years and it was actually founded by a Black woman, and yet no Black author had ever won. And so it was kind of controversial, like on Twitter, which was big at that time. People were hashtagging Oscar, how you have Oscar so white, they were doing Rita so white, because it was a really like a glaring kind of thing that this had never happened. And I had never entered, and I saw people saying, well, the reason no one Black has ever won is because they don't enter, which was absolutely not true. And kind of on a whim, really, I decided to enter. And I had no expectation that I would win because when in 37 years it hasn't happened for someone who looks like you, like you're not thinking, I'm gonna be the one, like it's gonna be me. And I had not even like written a speech or anything. And I was with my friend Nana and we were getting dressed, we were getting our makeup done. She goes, read me your speech. And I was like, what speech? And she was like, if you win. I said, oh, I didn't write one. She's like, what? No, you need to write something down just in case. And I'm like, it's not going to be me. And she forced me to write something down. And then when they called my name, I was so nervous, I accidentally deleted it. And so when I got on stage, I had to come completely off the cuff. But that felt great. It felt great because I hoped that it wasn't just me winning, that it would open doors for other Black authors to win. Unfortunately, that the organization isn't really functional right now because frankly, the things that kind of caused that situation, they didn't overcome. And so there were a lot of concerns after, and I was hoping that it would be kind of a legacy thing where it really impacted other Black authors' chances. But right now, that award is not really happening. So I've been, looking for other ways to have impact because I feel responsible. Just when you're given when you're given a platform, when you're given opportunity, I don't think that you should just kind of hoard it on yourself, that you should always be like, if you're climbing up, reaching back, if you are like breaking through a ceiling, making sure you're clearing enough space for somebody else to get through. If you're kicking down a door, like that you're like leaving it ajar, you're pulling somebody else through. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to do that. More recently, a couple of years ago, and I told you I'm an audio girl. So this meant as much to me as the Rita is that an Audi is like the audio equivalent of the Oscars. And in my category in romance, no Black author had ever won in like 26 years. And I won. And for me, I was so encouraged by that. And I was like, Black authors, enter. Like I want to see, I don't want to be the only one to have. It's actually those. I won another one last year. The that one and that one. Those are my Audi awards. I won another one this year for This Could Be Us. But I was like, I want to see more Black authors winning these. I want to see Black authors in these spaces. And so any kind of award that I win or kind of what feels to people like groundbreaking because no one who looks like you kind of has ever done this sort of thing. I'm always thinking, how can I use this to help other Black authors? I don't want to be the only one, you know?
Do you feel like there's been progress made in the publishing world, or there's still a long way to go in lifting up other Black women?
Oh gosh, there's such a long way to go. So yes, the answer is yes for both. I think we have made progress, but when I think about, first of all, only like, and I could be underestimating or overestimating just by a little because I haven't looked at the data in a long time, but it's only like 5% of all published authors are Black. That's very low, first of all. And then I think what's even more important is when we're looking in positions of power and influence in publishing, I'm talking about editors, I'm talking who are acquiring work, I'm talking about publicists, I'm talking about agents, I'm talking about, publishers themselves. Very, very, very few marginalized people. And when you have that situation, it makes it hard to really create a space where Black authors can thrive because you don't always know what we need, frankly. So I think definitely progress has been made, but we have to do better in not just acquiring Black authors as editors, editors who are acquiring Black authors, but giving them the resources and the visibility to thrive. And that's not always happening now. It's like you sign a Black author and then we'll see what happens. And then there is the complaint that they don't sell books. And it's like, well, you know what? I bet they would sell books if you invested in them the way you do in other authors. So this is something that I talk about constantly because I'm passionate about it. And I'm very fortunate to have a publisher who is investing in me, who is making sure that I get the visibility. And when people ask, why do you think you're successful, whatever that is, I'm like, I know in part it's because of visibility. And it's also giving me some kind of like voice. It's not just like, we're going to pay for you to do this, but you have to take whatever cover we give you, make the editorial choices we want, market it the way we tell you. When there's a real dialogue between the people who have the resources and the people who are being resourced, and we get to shape that space so that it's something that our most reliable readers, which are generally Black women, would respond to. So lots of listening that needs to happen in publishing.
What is your message for Black authors who feel like they've signed a deal and they're not getting that visibility? They're not getting what they think they need out of their publisher or their editor or what have you.
Yeah, I think everybody has to think about what their goals are, because I am in traditional publishing, but I'm what's called a hybrid author, meaning I self-publish and I traditionally publish. And I traditionally published when I first started. I published like 4 books, and then for like the next 7 years, I self-published and was doing great. I was making more money than I had ever made. I had, editorial control, marketing control, brand. I got to shape my own brand. But I also saw that there were resources that were in a traditional route that I couldn't access on my own. And I think that when authors are thinking about what they want their career to look like, not to compare it to anyone else's, to really think, okay, how important is it to me that my books are in Target or that my books are in Walmart or how important is that to me? Or do I want to make sure that or do I want to make more money? Or do I want to reach more people? Or do I want to, because there are a lot of indie authors who are making a lot more money than most traditionally published authors who are reaching actually a lot more readers who are having editorial control because of, in part, the virality of places like TikTok and other socials. It has exploded our ability to reach readers on our own. And so I think the first question is, do I need what they're offering? Or can I do this outside of that system? Can I meet my specific goals outside of that system? And if you're like, I want some of what traditional publishing is offering, then don't settle. Don't settle for less. Try to be in a position where you are bargaining. Because when I came back to traditional publishing from self-publishing, it was in a position of leverage. We were in an auction. So if you're in a situation where there are multiple publishers who want to work with you, it gives you some leverage to really think about what are the things that are going to help make me successful, and asking for those things, because it's not just getting the deal. It is the visibility, it is the opportunities, it is the support, it is the resources, and really also to not stop. And the reason I say to not stop is because I don't believe there has been ever in history a better time to be an author. And I say that because, in part, of spaces like TikTok and, Instagram, and how you can go viral and overnight, your life can change. So many of the New York Times bestsellers, #1 New York Times bestsellers, started as indie authors and exploded on some social media, platform, and traditional publishers then pursued them. So do what you love. Do what you love to your very best ability. Find ways to get it to readers, and then that will begin to create opportunities for you. But just I encourage them not to quit, for one thing, because it is hard. It is hard. And even who some people think wouldn't experience that, I also most of the time feel like I am going against the grain and swimming upstream most of the time. And I am someone who I acknowledge has a lot more opportunity and a lot more visibility than most of my, colleagues who are Black authors. So in conversations with them, I'm always like, okay, I've got it pretty good. I feel very blessed. And still, I am constantly kind of like facing some of those challenges. So we have to encourage each other and to look out for each other.
You mentioned that the Skyline series changed the trajectory of your career
Yeah.
earlier in the conversation. What do you think it is about this series and these characters that so many readers have fallen in love with over the years?
I think that one thing that I've really honed in on for this series is sameness. And what I mean by that is really writing people's real life experiences. And a lot of people are seeing themselves on the page who haven't as much in the past. Not that it's never happened, but just and seeing their friendships, like, oh my gosh, that's how we talk to each other. Oh my gosh, that's what I would do. That's what I experienced. Oh, my man is just like that. Whatever it is, but there's a resonance with this series that I think is a big part of why it's been successful. And I'm just really grateful. I hear from people so at least once, twice, 3 times a day, someone is in my DMs or comments or something saying, I came back to reading because of Before I Let Go. Like, I hadn't read in 10 years, and somebody was like, you have to read Before I Let Go. And then that like led me to all these other amazing books. And that's what I really love is this is in the romance genre, especially for Black readers, but not just Black readers, but as I hear it mostly from Black readers, it's like a gateway drug. It's like, I read Before I Let Go, and I'm like, what else is out there like this? And then, they're reading, Nikki Payne, and then they're reading Regina Black, and they're reading people like A.E. Valdez, and they're reading, just all these different people, J.L. Seegers. And it's like, the thing that I really love is that not only is it something that's changed the trajectory of my career, but it's like a gateway drug for people who had stopped reading for leisure. And they were like, what was I doing reading self-help like only reading self-help for the last 10 years. And now I'm reading romance and I'm reading people who thought they were not readers were not reading the right thing for them. And now they're reading 80 books a year, 80 books a year. And they're like, I haven't read 80 books in my life. How am I reading 80 books a year?
That must
So,
that must
yeah,
be so good as an author because I have had friends that have been the same way. All it takes is
yeah,
that one book to hook.
yes.
Did was it hard for you to, I guess not really say goodbye, but to write the final book in this series? Do you see it going anywhere else after this?
I mean, there are doors that are open. If we decided to walk through them, people are for people who are familiar with the series, people are always asking me about the daughters. Deja from Before I Let Go and Lupe from This Could Be Us. They're college age. Like by this book, they are seniors in college and they're doing college visits. And so everybody's like, "Ooh, we could do like an upper YA, we could do like a college age, we could do like a new adult series, spin-off series." And then people have said, "Oh, but her sisters, Soledad in the second book, we could do a whole like Afro-Latina sister, spin-off." And then from this book, especially, there's this little side romance that happens with the two assistants. And people are like, give us a novella of that. So there are a lot, who knows, what would happen. I am already on to, for me, I'm in a different mindset because I'm already writing the next book. And so it's like I'm doing promo and I'm about to tour and this book is about to release, but I'm really deep into writing and editing the next book. So I've been in Skyland since 2022. So I'm excited to go into new territory, but it's definitely been bittersweet. Like for me and for my readers, they're like, please just one more.
And I know there's going to be a Peacock adaptation. Do you know
Yeah.
anything about that project, or what can you tell us about that project?
We have this amazing group of producers. Like it's like a dream team. Like it's John Legend's team at Get Lifted. It's Malcolm D. Lee's team. He's the kind of brain and heart behind the Best Man franchise. And then Deborah Martin Chase, who is an icon and a legend. She discovered Anne Hathaway. She discovered, she's done all kinds of stuff. And now she's doing Broadway and she's like a Tony Award winning producer on Broadway. So to have three of these like mega producers it feels like such a blessing. We are working hard. I can say that we are working hard behind the scenes. It is my most asked question is when is the show coming? And so I am not, I always say to people, you're not gonna get me in trouble. I'm not going to talk out of turn, but I just always assure people that we are still working on it, that it is in progress, and that I hope that there's something that I am allowed to share soon. Yeah, but it's on it'll be on Peacock, and knock on wood. And I say knock on wood because I don't know if people realize how rare it is for something to actually make it all the way to screen. Like so many things are optioned, and until I can literally like use the remote to turn it on and watch it for myself, I don't believe, it's like I'm just holding it like this until it actually happens because it is so rare. And but right now we're really close and we're feeling really good about it.
Good, great. Before we go, is there anything else you want readers to know about Can't Get Enough or any of your other books?
Just that I think my big hope for women who are reading this series is that we don't have to settle. And I think that's something that it's it's so funny because my assistant, I didn't even realize that she has like a new boyfriend. And
Oh,
apparently there were things he was prioritizing over her. And I didn't know this. And she's listening to the audiobook of Can't Get Enough. And after I think like chapter 3 or 4, she tells me I called him and I broke up with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. And she goes, no, no. Hendrix showed me that I don't have to settle, and it's so funny because I was talking with somebody else and she said that when she read Before I Let Go, which was the first book of the series, she's like, I broke with my boyfriend reading that series. I'm like, I'm gonna get a bad rep for like ruining relationships. But I think the thing that they're saying and that I hear from so many women is we don't have to settle. A lot of times people who are dismissive of romance, one of their, to me, like flimsy arguments is that it gives women unrealistic expectations. And I think in this series and in a lot of the romance that I'm reading now, it's not that our expectations are realistic, like, oh, I'm going to have a billionaire boyfriend. That's not the expectation. The expectation is that you are going to be someone who sees me as an equal. The expectation is going to be that you are someone I can trust. The expectation is going to be that you can love me outrageously and that we are going to be partners and that you are not going to ask me to subvert my dreams and my goals and my ambitions for yours, but that we are going to like run together side by side. That's not too much to ask. And that's what I think I want women to walk away from these books saying, this is not too much to ask. Not that he's a billionaire or not that no, but it's these things, this basic respect, this basic like equity, this symbiosis in a healthy relationship. It's not too much to ask, and I don't have to settle. And Hendrix is 40, like we said, and one thing that her thing is, I have a big life. I love my life. I have friends, I have family, I can get what I want. Why would I add someone to my life who wants to detract from it? And I think and I know that sometimes we get lonely, and we despair that we will find someone to share our lives with. But any woman who has ever been connected to someone who was bad for them, connected to someone who detracted from their goals and their dreams and their ambitions, connected to, whether it's legally or just in a relationship for a long term, with someone who was not good for them, they will tell you, you would rather be on your own with an amazing life than have someone who is going to make your life less amazing. And that's, I think, what I want women to walk away from this with. And then when somebody like that comes along, recognize it, go for it,
Because Hendrix is apprehensive at first with that, and
yes.
really find, will he be in her life and she can continue to do all these things? And I think it's he shows up for her, and all the men are showing up for their partners, and that's
Yes.
what women really want. We don't need
Yes.
partners. We just need you to show up and also bring us our earrings when we forget our
Yes.
earrings.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. If you find a good one, keep them.
Kennedy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love your books. They're just so special, and I know they're so special to so many readers. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So great talking to you.
You too.